You forget where you put your keys. You walk into a room and stand there wondering why you came in. You're in the middle of a sentence and the word, it was just there, and then it's gone. You read a paragraph, finish it, and have absolutely no idea what you just read. We call this getting older. We blame it on stress, on bad sleep, on screens, on the relentless pace of modern life. But a study published this month in the journal Nature has found something that nobody was fully looking at before. Something that starts not in your brain, but in your gut, with a specific bacterium that produces a specific compound that fires up your immune system. That travels up a nerve most people have never heard of, and quietly, systematically lands in the part of your brain responsible for memory and makes it harder to remember. And here's the part that stopped me completely when I heard about this. This bacterium increases in your gut as you age. It's not random, it's not bad luck. It's a feature of growing older in a modern body, eating a modern diet, in a world your digestive system was never designed for. This is not a story about getting older. This is a story about evolutionary mismatch. And we are going deep today. Welcome to Mismatch Monday. I'm your host, Sarah. I'm the Chief Human Officer and co-founder of The Wired Ape, an interdisciplinary platform that sits at the intersection of evolutionary psychology, neuroscience, anthropology, and global wisdom traditions. The whole premise of everything we do here is this: we are Stone Age animals navigating a hypermodern world. And the gap between the world our biology was built for and the world we actually live in, that gap is what we call the mismatch. And it shows up everywhere. Our bodies, our relationships, our communities, our economies. Every Monday, we pull apart one of those mismatches and look at it from the inside out. Today's episode is called Your Gut is Running Your Memory, and it's getting worse with age. Now, I want to be very clear from the start. This is not a health scare episode. I'm not a doctor. Nothing here is medical advice. This is a science and culture conversation about what a landmark research paper tells us about what it means to be a human animal in 2026. And it's one of the most remarkable things I have heard of in a very long time. Let's go. Let's start with where we were before this paper dropped, because context is everything here. For decades, the scientific understanding of age-related memory decline was essentially this: the brain gets older, neurons degrade, synaptic connections weaken, and memory suffers. It was treated as a hardware problem. The machine runs down. Sad, but inevitable. And there was a growing understanding that inflammation played a role, specifically neuroinflammation. That's been linked to cognitive decline, to Alzheimer's, to all kinds of neurodegenerative processes. That is not new. What was not clearly mapped, what nobody had drawn a clean line through, was the complete pathway from the outside world, through the body, into the brain, causing that inflammation. What's the source? Where does it start? Is it inevitable? And critically, can it be interrupted? This is what the Nature paper answers. And the answer they found is extraordinary. This was a collaboration between the researchers of the University of Pennsylvania, the Arc Institute, and Stanford University. The lead authors are Timothy Cox and Christoph Tice. What they did is map a complete biological circuit, from a specific gut bacterium all the way through measurable memory loss, step by step, molecule by molecule, with interventions at each stage that could block or reverse it. We have never had this before. Not this complete. Not this clean. Let me walk you through the circuit. I'm going to keep it accessible, but I refuse to flatten it so much that we lose what makes it important. So stick with me. Start in your gut. You have trillions of microorganisms living in your intestinal tract. We call the full community of these organisms the gut microbiome. And this ecosystem is not static. It changes throughout your life. The community of the bacteria in your gut at age 25 looks very different from the community at age 65. One of the organisms that becomes more dominant as you age is called Parabacteroides goldsteini, a type of gut bacterium. It's not a villain in the way a pathogen is a villain. It lives in healthy guts. It's just that as we age, more of it shows up. And as the researchers discovered, the more of it there is, the more of a particular set of compounds it produces. These compounds are called medium-chain fatty acids, specifically 3 of them: 3-hydroxyoctanoic, decanoic acid, and dodecanoic acid. Don't worry about memorizing these names. What matters is what they do. These fatty acids find a receptor on the surface of certain immune cells in your intestinal lining. The receptor is called GPR. When the fatty acids bind to GPR84, they activate the immune cells underneath it. And when those immune cells activate, they produce inflammatory signaling molecules. Two of the main ones are called TNF and IL-1 beta. So we have more parabacteroids, Goldsteiny, more medium-chain fatty acids, GPR84 activation, immune cells releasing TNF and IL-1 beta. Now, here's where it gets from the gut to the brain. Running alongside your digestive system, from your gut all the way up to your brainstem, is a nerve called the vagus nerve, specifically the vagal afferent neurons. These neurons are constantly sampling conditions in your guts and sending information up to your brain. Are you hungry? Are you full? Is something wrong down here? This is part of what scientists call interoception. Your brain knows what is happening in your gut partly because these vagal neurons are continuously talking to it. Now, when TNF and IL-1 beta, those inflammatory molecules, are present in significant quantities near these vagal neurons, something happens. The neurons begin to malfunction. The signal they send upward gets weaker, less precise. The interoceptive communication between your gut and your brain degrades. And the specific place in your brain that receives this degraded signal, the place that relies on clean, accurate, interoceptive input to do one of its most important jobs, is the hippocampus. When the hippocampus stops receiving good information from the vagus nerve, its ability to form what scientists call novelty responses begins to break down, and you start to forget. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually. The word that was right there, the room you walked into, the paragraph you read twice. Now, everything I have just described is a pathway, a proposed mechanism. Science requires more than a proposed mechanism. It requires evidence. And this is where the paper becomes even more extraordinary. The researchers tested this at every single stage of the circuit. First, they took the microbiome from aged mice and transplanted it into young, healthy mice. Within weeks, those young mice showed measurable short-term memory impairment. Their hippocampal novelty responses deteriorated, meaning the gut bacteria of an old mouse transplanted into a young mouse aged the young mouse's memory. Then they did the reverse. They raised the mice in completely germ-free environments, no gut bacteria whatsoever. These mice showed significantly delayed cognitive decline. With no microbiome to produce the damaging compounds, the aging brain stayed sharper longer. Then they gave aged mice antibiotics, which cleared out the parabacteroid Goldsteiny and other bacteria, and the aged mice's memory function improved. Then they identified Goldsteiny specifically as the top candidate driver, and they showed that its abundance increases with age and is transmissible, meaning you can catch this age acceleration from another organism's gut bacteria. The old mice gave it to the young mice. Then they tested whether blocking GPR84 would help. They used a compound called PBI 4050. And yes, blocking GPR8 restored youthful cognitive performance in aged mice. Then they tested capsaicin. Capsaicin activates a receptor called TRPV1, a receptor found on vagal neurons and other sensory nerve cells, activated by heat, and capsaicin on the vagal afferent neurons. When capsaicin stimulated those neurons directly, it rescued memory function in aged mice. Let me say that again. A compound found in chili peppers, used in traditional cooking for 10,000 years, directly stimulated the vagus nerve and restored memory functioning in aging animals. Then they tested a GLP-1 receptor agonist called liraglutide. It also enhanced memory function in aged mice. Then they developed bacteriophages that targeted parabacteroids, Goldsteiny specifically. These phages reduced the fatty acid levels in the gut and improved cognition. And finally, they neutralized TNF and IL-1 beta, the other inflammatory signaling molecule, with antibodies. Memory function restored. 7 different intervention points, 7 confirmations of the same circuit. This is not a hypothesis. This is a map. I want to step back from the molecular biology for a moment. because everything I've just described is extraordinary on its own terms as science. But for us, the wired ape, this is something more. This is one of the most vivid examples of evolutionary mismatch I have ever encountered. Here's what I mean. The gut microbiome did not evolve in a vacuum. It evolved in a relationship with what human beings were eating for 200,000 years. And what were we eating? Whole foods, high fiber foods, wild plants, roots, tubers, fermented things, seasonal fruits, animals. A diet with an enormous diversity of plants, far more than most modern people consume. And critically, a diet that was not engineered, not processed, not designed in a laboratory to activate every pleasure receptor in your brain simultaneously. What does that diet do for the microbiome? It feeds diversity, and a healthy, diverse gut microbiome is one where Parabacteroides goldsteini. It exists, but it doesn't dominate. But it does not dominate. The balance holds. Now, look at the modern diet. Ultra-processed foods, low in fiber, low in diversity. And we know from the JACC Advances study published this month, a separate paper, different researchers, that 9 or more servings of ultra-processed food per day raises the risk of heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular death by 67%. 67%. And each additional daily serving adds another 5.1% risk increase. The ultra-processed diet starves the beneficial bacteria. It feeds the harmful ones, including, it appears, the ones that produce the fatty acids that degrade the vagal signal that supports hippocampal memory encoding. Your modern diet is feeding the bacteria that is making you forget. That is a mismatch. Now, I want to take this somewhere that might surprise you, because the paper also found that capsaicin can stimulate the vagal afferent neurons and restore memory function. Capsaicin in chili peppers, used in traditional cuisines across Asia, the Americas, Africa, and the Middle East for thousands of years. Ayurvedic traditions have used chili and its relatives for formulations for digestion, circulation, and mental clarity for millennia. Traditional Chinese medicine uses warming spices to activate what they call digestive fire, the qi of the gut. Mexican, Korean, Indian, Ethiopian cuisines, all of which use chili as a central ingredient, are not just flavor traditions. They are health traditions, embodied, accumulated, inherited knowledge about what the human body needs. The neuroscientists at Penn and Stanford did not know they were validating a 10,000-year practice when they ran their capsaicin experiments, but they were. Your grandmother's spicy food was not just preference, it was medicine, and the vagus nerve knew it first. This is why the wired ape exists, because wisdom traditions are not superstition. They are data, accumulated across thousands of years of lived human experience. And sometimes, more often than the modern world gives credit for, the science eventually catches up and shows you exactly why the practice worked. I want to introduce one more idea from this paper, because the researchers didn't just map the problem. They named a solution framework, and the name that they gave it is extraordinary. They called it interoceptomimetics. Interoceptomimetics, that is a brand new word, a brand new concept. And what it describes is a potential category of future treatments that work not by directly targeting the brain, but by restoring the signal pathway between the gut and the brain. Instead of saying, let's fix the hippocampus, instead of saying, let's attack neuroinflammation directly, the idea is, let's restore the interoreceptor conversation. Let's turn the signal back up. Let's give the brain the information it has been missing. And the remarkable thing is, some of those interoceptive mimetics may already exist in your kitchen, in chili peppers, in fermented foods, in fiber-rich plants, in the diet your great-great-grandmother ate before there was such a thing as a processed food aisle. I want to be very clear about something before I close. I am not telling you to eat chili peppers and expect your memory to get better. That is not what the science says. This research was conducted in mice, and while the pathway is clear, the clinical translation to humans is not yet fully established. Trials in humans will take years. What I am saying is something different. I am saying that this paper gives us a framework for thinking about memory and aging and the relationship between the gut and the brain that we did not have before. And that framework points towards something that has always been true in every wisdom tradition that ever fed human beings. Diversity of whole foods, fermented foods, spiced foods, seasonal foods. These are not luxuries. They are biological necessities. Your gut microbiome evolved with them, and without them, over time, the consequences are measurable. They show up in your hippocampus. They show up in your memory. They show up in the word that was just there and then wasn't. The mismatch is real, and it has an address. It lives in the gap between the diet your biology was built for and the diet the modern food environment surrounds you with every day. That gap is not personal failure. It is evolutionary displacement. And the more we understand it, at the molecular level, at the cultural level, at the civilizational level, the more we can choose differently, with knowledge, with intention, with ritual, which, for what it's worth, is exactly what the show is for. That's Mismatch Monday for this week. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone. Post it. Talk about it over dinner. Start an argument at work. That is what ideas are for.